this tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to make a beautiful pottery moon vase using a slump mould. I'll take you through step by step everything from shaping the clay to applying texture. Let's get started. So you want to wedge your clay, as with all of your clay work, just pushing down, pushing forward, using the heels of my hands. And this helps to make the clay easier to roll, easier to work with, and remove some of the air that might be trapped in the clay. Once you've wedged it, we're going to whack it, whack it, whack it. And then we're pushing it in, smacking it into a ball, as if you were going to be throwing on a wheel. I've got my little rod that I use. It's a rolling pin, but it's not really a rolling pin. It's just a piece of round timber from the local hardware store. What I like about this is I have cut it to a nice wide length, so it means I can roll out quite big slabs. So what we're going to do is whack it first, give it a bit of a whack. Flip it over. So you're pushing down and you're pushing out as you work the clay, and you can come back. I flip my clay constantly, pushing it out, coming back. Change direction so that when you flip it, you turn it over, and this helps to keep that round shape that we want for our slump mould. Probably a nice thickness, so it's about 1/4 inch thick. So now I'm taking my paint scraper from the hardware store. It was about $3 here in New Zealand. I find these are great for compressing your clay. So what you do is you're pushing down on an angle and pulling across. So you're pushing down quite firmly like this, and you're pulling across, and this is really compressing that clay slab down nice and smooth. I'm going to flip it. So this is a 20 centimetre plaster slump mould. It's a beautiful mould to use for making bowls as well as vases, because the plaster is a special ceramic plaster that helps remove the moisture from your clay piece, and it makes it very easy to remove. You can use other bowls that you have in your kitchen. You just need to make sure that you put oil on them or Glad wrap so that you can easily remove them and they don't stick. That is the beauty of getting a plaster mold. You can make these yourself using plaster of Paris, and I highly recommend these if you want to carry on making bowls and vases like what I'm going to show you today. So we've got our little plaster here. We've rolled out our slab. Now we're going to be placing our slab into the slump. So they're called slump molds because your clay is going to slump into it. So we want to gently torque this piece of clay and falling into the mold. So we're slumping it right down to the bottom where we can start to feel that, but you don't want to force it. You don't want to stretch your clay and force it into splitting. I'm just going to be making little darts here because that's how I do it, and that just helps the clay fit the mold. We've got it nicely fitting down in there. Now what I'm going to do is cut my darts off on both sides, cutting the excess clay. Join that. So cut off all of this extra clay that we've got here. Cut my darts. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to join those pieces that we've just cut so that we're going to have a nice smooth inner circle here. Slump molds are a lot easier to me than using a hump mold, which is where you're putting the clay over the top of something, because when the clay shrinks, what it does is it will shrink away from the slump mold and makes it a lot easier to remove it. It also means when you're pushing your clay like I am, you can push it against the outer wall of that slump and you actually get a really nice finish on the inside as well as the outside. So we want to try and keep these walls nice and even. So I'm going to take my little tool and I'm just going to be pushing that out around the outside edge and just smoothing it. Off the excess. You can also see with these slump molds the thickness of your pot, because we want to make sure that our pot is the same thickness. So I'm going to be taking my sponge tool, my sponge. I'm not saturating it, it's just slightly damp, and we're going to smooth out the inside. And I'm pushing out against the wall in this, and we're going to just carefully push out and even up those sides. And I'm pushing down so that this will be smoothing the mold on the outside as well. So I'm just going to make that nice and smooth and nice and even. So I'm pushing out because I'm trying to even up this thickness of these walls. Okay, so this is all ready now just to leave out. I'm going to put this outside in the wind and the sun just to dry off a little, and hopefully it will start to shrink down away from the walls of this mold, and then we'll be able to remove it and make the second half of this pot. So this one here has been sitting outside in the sun for about an hour, and it has started, as you can see, to come away from this plaster mold, which is why I highly recommend getting a plaster mold. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove it from the mold, and I am going to pop this little spinning Jenny tumble turner on. I'm here flipping it over down there, and there's my little mold, my So what we can do now is just very gently smooth out any of those little cracks on the edges. Just from the seams where we joined the clay, but as you can see, you get a really beautiful smooth finish and very little repair work to do. So we're just gonna smooth this. And so what I'm gonna do is cover this now with some plastic because I don't want it to dry off much more than this, because what we're going to do is I'm going to make another slump plaster and then we're going to join the two together. So I'm just going to cover this. I'm just going to cover that up and put that off to the side whilst we make the second half. So I've had the second part of my vase outside just drying off and setting up a little bit in the sun. I think it's nearly ready to pop out of this plaster mold, and then I'll be showing you how I join the two together and make a really cool round vase using a slump mold. Alright, so the first thing that I want to do, I'm going to take a little cookie cutter here and I want to cut a hole in the bottom of my base. This is so that this saves me cutting it when it has formed, which is another way that you can do it, but I find it a lot easier to do it now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark out as close as I can to the center point, and I'm just going to push that down, and pull that out. So, and we can cut that from the other side. So I'm going to get my... Okay, so we're going to, once again, we're going to flip this. And there's our beautiful little hemisphere slump. We can just... You'll see that's just going to come away. So I'm going to take this one, put that off to... This is the first one that I put in the mold, so this is slightly firmer than the one that we've just taken out. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to pop my brand on the bottom, which is a little starfish for starfish design, and we're going to turn that over and we're just going to drop it down just so that it gets a nice flat base. So we're going to have to wet those edges nice and wet around here. So I'm just going to score that. And I'm just going to... So this is the one I've just taken out of the mold, and it is a lot softer, but But once again, we're just going to score that join edge. Help me join it. Okay, bring number 1 back. Okay, so now I want to fit this one, flipping it over, and we're going to join it on top of that. So you want to try and sit it perfectly in the middle. That's looking pretty good. So you don't want to change the form. I can actually put my hand inside and support it. Nice little bit of slip forming. So I can actually get my hand in here, and I am just going to keep those bits. So I'm not pushing against it. I don't want to change the beautiful round shape that we have. Just once it's set up a wee bit more, I'm going to put it back outside in the wind and the sun, and I'll probably leave this to set up overnight before I start carving some texture into it. My little vase has been drying off overnight, and now it's beautifully leather hard, and it's ready for me to start scraping out some texture. What I want to do with this pot is I want to create some texture in the bottom half and then glaze the top half in a nice smooth kind of design. So what I need to do first is I'm going to just use my pencil. I'm going to measure down certain little points so that I'm going to get a relatively even design, and then I'll be drawing it with a pencil and carving the bottom. I'm going to take my ruler and I'm wanting to carve this bottom half, leave this top part nice and smooth. So what I'm going to do is just measure down for this one, 7 centimeters to there. You could put a rubber band around here, which would give you a really nice line, but I am going to do a bit of a wiggly line. So I'm just going to mark the lowest point that I want so that I get a nice finish. Alright, so I've got my little dots around here. And what I want to do is just create and this is just going to be a wee guide for me as I follow around. Maybe dot down there. That's my lowest point. So now I've got my lines around the top. This is going to be where I'm going to be applying my glazes, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start carving the bottom of my pot. So I'm just taking this little tool here, and I'm going to be putting it in at the top of that line, pulling down and just taking little strips away. So you've got to push quite firmly, and I'm going straight down. And this is just going to give my pot some texture. So what I'm going to do now, I've met up with the first line and I'm going to be going underneath that line with my next textured line. I'm just going to smooth off any of those little rough bits, rough edges on the carving, because we don't want any sharp pieces. Alright, so now I've finished applying my texture, I'm going to be putting my pot away in a warm, dry space so that it can fully dry off before I biscuit fire. I'll be doing a follow-up online tutorial of how I apply my glazes to this pot. What I will be doing is putting on a speck on the top, and then I'll be applying a matte stain finish on the base. So hopefully you like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time. Happy potting.